Hey, this is Neil Bawa, the mad scientist in multifamily, and you're listening to the Mailbox Money Show with Bronson Hill.
All right, so a lot of people wonder, how do I get started in real estate, particularly if the market that I'm investing in does not look good or the numbers are not good. Now, I live in California, Pasadena, California. The numbers are pretty tough to make them even pencil, whether you're looking at single family or multifamily. My friend Billy Keels has done an amazing job of really, his podcast is actually called the Going Long show or the Going Long podcast. So he's actually all the way in Spain, and he's done an amazing job of building a portfolio in the US and also doing some things outside of real estate in the energy space. So welcome, Billy. How are you today?
Hey Bronson, thanks so much, man. This is like a dream come true, man. To be here and sharing the stage with you, this is this is
Oh,
really cool. So I'm looking forward to another wonderful conversation. I've enjoyed the pre-talk, and yeah, looking to add a little bit of value if I can through my experiences.
yeah, it's awesome. Man. We had a little chat before we started. Just really excited to talk with you and kind of unpack some of your experience. But we really have a very similar track that we've done, right? We're both high paid professionals. You were in, tech sales. I was in medical device sales, making good money. And yeah, we had this inner desire to leave our jobs. And people think, oh my gosh, you're crazy. You're making all this money. Why would you want to leave? But we did it. So talk us a little bit about your story. And, tell us about your story and how you got started in real estate and kind of just how you've developed just an amazing real estate and investing business.
Yeah, sure, man. But if you would allow me, Bronson, just really quickly, because I know this podcast, you put a lot of effort into it and a lot of love behind it and a lot of preparation. So for those that are watching and listening, if you haven't already left Bronson an honest written review and a rating, take just a couple of seconds to do that now, because it's also going to help him to attract other guests that are going to add more value to you. So I know I'm the guest, and hopefully that's okay with you,
Thanks,
Bronson.
man.
But
No,
but
that's huge.
definitely,
Thank you.
yeah, sure,
Appreciate it
man,
a lot.
sure, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, you asked me a little bit about my how I got to this point, and a little bit about my investing experience. And so, yes, I did not ever plan on being or living in Barcelona, Spain. In fact, I'm from Columbus, Ohio originally, and I'm the product of a family with divorced parents and also parents that neither of the two of them had the chance to finish college education. And so what I saw from them was they learned how to work harder, harder, and harder, not necessarily smarter, because that's the thing that they saw. And so while I watched them sometimes make very difficult decisions about finances in terms of what bills they were going to pay, I always knew that the thing that no matter what happened, I knew that I was going to have to work hard. And so by the time I was 12, we'd lived, born in Ohio, we lived in Colorado, we lived in Texas. My dad had got into he was working in the oil fields at that point in time. And they eventually separated, came back, and I stuck with that whole like work hard ethic and work ethic. And so I did that, got really good grades in high school, really good grades in college. And what I was happening to me was every time that I studied hard, I got good grades, and then I got the recognition. And so I studied hard, I got good grades and got the recognition. And I always thought that that was the formula to be able to get what it was that I wanted. And that was until I got rejected from my dream job twice, not just once, but twice after college. And I realized that through rejection is really where the biggest learning opportunities were, because I wanted to work for P&G. Like that was my big thing. And in the second time I was rejected, I'd actually added a second degree. So I lived overseas. I was living in Valencia, Spain at the time. I came back. I got this, with my second degree, international experience. I was sure I was going to get this job. Rejected. I had the really good fortune of having a good friend of mine. His name is Andy. He actually lives in St. Louis, and he told me about these people that were working and traveling around the world. And at the time, it was 1996, there were about 6,000 people that applied for roles, and I was one of 26 people. And the reason I tell you that story, Bronson, is because at the age of 26, I was very fortunate because I had the chance to work and travel throughout 58 different countries with
Wow, incredible.
this job, which was my backup job, right? And so after I did that 5 years, 58 countries, I didn't see myself doing a normal 9 to 5 job. So I ended up applying and was accepted at a university in Paris, France, the Sorbonne. And I was accepted and I took a 1 year sabbatical. The idea was I was going to learn how to learn a little bit more about French language and culture. I was going to learn how to salsa dance, believe it or not, and I was going to learn about wine. Well, just to make a short story long or a long story short, since then, it's been 21 years. I lived in Paris. I moved to the south of France where I met this really cool individual who's now my wife. I lived in Italy. And then I eventually came to Barcelona, Spain, where I've been living for the last 21 years. So I moved here in 2005. So I always kind of joke with people, be careful those 1-year sabbaticals, because it can end up being, 21 years, three countries,
Amazing.
4 additional languages, and also, being able to be married. So kind of all that as a background. Throughout it, I continued to work in my corporate job. And, 26 years later, I'm no longer in the corporate world, but what I realized is the reason that I'm able to be and do the things that I'm doing now was because for 10 years, Bronson, I was investing on the side. I'm sure you can kind of relate to this kind of stuff, right? It didn't happen overnight. It took a decade of being able to invest long distance, doing that exclusively from Barcelona, always in US-based markets on locations, because that's what made the most sense for me. And when I got started in real estate, I had positive experiences. And as we talked about before, I've since learned that it's about being able to invest in the things that make the most sense for me in the context of my life. And most importantly, the investment destinations that I'm looking to go to with my family. So it's maybe a long-winded answer, but just to also give a little bit of context to how we got to this point in time, and a little bit about my investing experience and some of the corporate stuff.
I love it. Well, I feel like you're my guy, man. Like your story is like the dream that everybody wants to do, right? 58 countries. I've been to 40 countries. I've got 41 coming up with Patagonia here later this year. But you did it. You're living overseas. You're doing it. And I wanted to touch base on a couple things there. A lot of people, they don't think it's possible to passively invest or invest out of area or to do this kind of thing. And I think when I first started, it was really hard for me to get my head around the idea of doing something from a distance. And I just had an interview I did yesterday where it was kind of this conversation where, gosh, if I'm locally, people say, oh, I should live within 2 hours of where you invest. And you hear those rules people say, but the challenge of and people ask, well, wait, hold on, you live in California and all your stuff is in Florida and Georgia primarily. And you don't have anything in California. So how does that work? And I said, well, because I've set up my business this way, though, or as an investor, I've set up this way, I can't be the guy who's out there checking on stuff all the time. I have to have team members. But what the positive of that is, it allows me to scale. I have no limits of how big I can scale or what I can do. And I had trust team members, but it makes your team really, really important. So I think that's really applicable, whether you're a passive investor or you're doing it, like you and I, where you're building something active. So how have you built your team of partners and found deals? And I know you're doing things outside of real estate. How have you developed all of this kind of beyond just you being the one who's doing it?
Yeah. So, and you mentioned a couple of things that I believe are absolutely critical. One of the things you said was trust, and that's absolutely key. And through leading organizations, right? When I was at the company that I was working for in the enterprise software space, I led a business that was a $100 million business across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And so when you're doing that from Barcelona, it's very difficult to be in Johannesburg, in London, and also in Istanbul at the same time. So you start to learn how to put different systems, processes in place, and also mechanisms to be able to follow up. And at the same time, I'm going to share a little bit something with you, Bronson. You may not know this, but I am a recovering perfectionist. And so one of the things that happened, one of the things that, there you go, that it took me, because usually it was me doing things, and because I did things at a really high level, I always expected that things were always going to be done at the same way that I tried to do. So there, in the beginning, coming back to trust, it was really difficult for me because I was thinking, well, nobody's going to do it like I'm doing. But at the same time, I was very, very fortunate. Right. In the beginning, it caused me a lot of consternation. I was like, oh my gosh, hang on a second. How am I going to be able to do this? I knew that I didn't want to invest here in Barcelona because I was looking for cash flow, and I couldn't find that benefit in the location that I was living in. So I chose to go overseas. And the thing that I've realized is that by not being able to focus on the property because I could not physically get there, what it did is it forced me to focus on the process. And because I've been able to focus on the process and use all of that energy that I had towards that, I was clear on what it was that I wanted personally in terms of a benefit. I found the locations that were going to give me the highest probability of getting that cash flow, getting those tax benefits. And then from there, and to your point, it was about how do I construct the team? How do I build the team so that it doesn't matter what the opportunity is. It doesn't matter if it's a 500 unit apartment building, if it's energy equipment, if it's ATM machines, because all of the things are aligned with one another. And as it comes to building a team, it's really about understanding, how do I set the direction for the team, be crystal clear on what are the things, the outcomes, right? And this is one of the benefits that we also got from being in sales. It's not about the time you spend, it's about the outcome that you can get. And are you setting the clear perspective in terms of the outcome that you're looking for your team to drive? Do you have the different mechanisms in place to understand that they've understood what outcomes you're looking for, and you're confident that they are able to deliver? Because they're not just saying that they've done it, but they're able to show you the track record that they've done, the bench that they have, the things that they've been through that were difficulties, so that you understand that when you're going to run into these same challenges, that you have the right team on the ground. Because when you're in California and your asset is actually in Florida, well, you need to make sure that your team understands what you want and you have the mechanisms in place. And that's basically how I've gotten to that point. Some of it was difficult to get there, and I made some mistakes along the way, and I'm sure you have too. But we learn and we become better investors and business leaders as a result of that.
Yeah, you shared a couple of things I think that is awesome, because a lot of times, I didn't realize how many transferable skills I had from my job. I mean, just the things you described. I know the company you worked for and the place you were was a very high level sales position. And so you brought, talk about systems and processes and performance. And when you're in sales, anybody who's ever in sales, like it's a pressure job. So you have to have things in place that you're performing. And so you talked about, how you approach things. And I was just talking about this recently about it. Real estate is great, and I love what it's done for me, but it's not about the asset. It's about what it actually does for you. And so when you find out what you actually need, a lot of people are like, well, they don't really know what they need. Oh, I should do real estate. So what are your goals? If you're looking to retire from your job, typically you need to find out what your expenses actually are and figure out, can I replace that through passive or active income? And if you can do that through monthly or quarterly cash flow, you start to get to realize, okay, I'm actually financially free. I can actually get to a place of financial freedom. So for you, I love that you've done that, and you've been able to do that. And actually, you were talking, kind of in the green room before, about how you've actually made some pivots to things beyond real estate, which I have also as well. We're doing ATM machines. We've got some stuff in the energy space. And the energy space, you're doing some awesome, I call it like the holy grail of investing, right? Because then, high earners like you and I, before we're in real estate, you actually could potentially depreciate ordinary income to zero, which that's where it gets really magical. And then you can actually say, hey, I'm actually investing and getting a 10, 20% return on this, and I'm getting all these tax benefits. So it takes my returns to 30, 40%. So talk to us a little bit about the energy space, what you're doing, whatever you can share. We'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, sure. And, and I love the way that you set the context there, Bronson, because it is about, it's not just about, I want to be in real estate, or I want to be in the ATM space, or I want to be in the energy space. It's about, what is it that you as an individual, right? Because this is the thought process that I finally realized, that it wasn't necessarily that I was in love with real estate. It was that I was looking to gain more control over my time, be able to invest my time with the people that I love the most, and do it in the way that made the most sense for me, where it made the most sense for me. I mean, I was also, talking to you and sharing that, there are a couple things that really helped me to move into this space. And I'll tell you about the energy stuff, but like a couple things that helped me realize that it's not about money. And I don't come from a family with money. So it's taken a long time to really understand the constructs of money and how you get there. Is two major events really helped me get clarity on really what is important. One, I missed my son's third birthday. And when that happened to me, because I was a young father at the time, and I was wanting to always be physically and mentally present, when I missed his birthday, that like mentally and emotionally really crushed me. And that is what made me start to take action, go from theory to action. That's how I started getting into real estate. And then one of the things that helped me to realize that, although I really liked enterprise software sales, I wasn't in love with enterprise software sales. My dad got really sick last year, and towards the end of the year, and I realized when I watched him in his ICU and on these, pieces of equipment that were actually keeping him alive, that it was time for me to make a change. Like, I'd been going into my job, like my 9 to 5 was optional really for the last 3 or 4 years, primarily because one of the things that I was doing, and this comes back to answering your question in the energy space, is I started realizing that it's about the different benefits that a particular investment vehicle can provide you, because we're all looking to get to a destination. Like, I was looking to get to that destination to be completely in control of my time. Someone else may be wanting to make sure that they have X amount of money recurring when they get to their 70th birthday. Someone else may have just want to be able to travel around the world once a year in first class. And that's what each person is looking to do differently. And so based on the destination that I was trying to get to, I realized, how can I use these different vehicles? Because real estate was serving me very, very well because it was very efficient in terms of the income that it was bringing in. It was a hard asset, so it was backed by something. You could actually touch it and feel it. It was 180 degrees away from what I was doing, right? Because I was in an intangible software sales space. So I enjoyed that. I loved the ATM thing because it was a recurring revenue stream. I thought that was absolutely fantastic, and it was helping us move closer to our goals. But I just had this one kind of issue that kept happening for me, because all of these really income streams that were passive were extremely tax efficient, but then I kept writing 40+% checks to Uncle Sam. And I got tired of that. I was like, how can I find a place that will help me? And eventually I learned about an opportunity in the energy space. And so what that helped me to do, and I love what you said earlier, it's not just about passive income, it's also about active income and understanding how these different types of income work, how you generate them, and what you can do to make them as most efficient for me as possible, right, at the time. And so when I realized that I was not asking the right questions, and one of our favorite people like Russell Gray talks about, if you want to get better answers, you have to ask better questions. And so the question became, okay, all this tax efficient money is coming in, but what can I do to also generate more income and be able to keep more of this money in my pocket instead of giving it to Uncle Sam? And that is when I found out about the energy space, and specifically how you could help the government produce more energy. And being a part of that, not only could I create more income consistently, but I could also, because I was involved in pieces of equipment that were able to bring down my ordinary income, I could keep more of my money. And the important part was not just that I was keeping my money, but that I could use that to invest in other assets, and those other assets were also providing me the runway to be able to make the 9 to 5 that I was going into optional. And so when I had that real life event, that's when I recognized, okay, it's the effective use of all of these different assets to get me to the end game that I was looking for. So hopefully that answers the question and paints a little context as well.
No, I love it. It's great, man. You have a great way of explaining things, and I think it's one thing I realized when I was working full time and I was making my 200,000 plus per year. I could make 140, and if I was paying no taxes, I'd be making the same amount, or maybe making more.
Right.
And so people don't realize, there are these creative things out there. And when I live in California, where the highest tax rate in the U.S., 37%, and then it's 12.9%. I think it's 12.3% or something on top of that. So it's almost 50%. And I worked with a lot of physicians, so a lot of people are like. And so when they hear this stuff about paying no taxes, or even as a physician or as a high earner, there are ways to do it. And I think Brian Tracy has this quote: he says, if you want to earn more, you have to learn more, right? So you just got to open your mind and realize, and instead of saying, well, I can't do that, you say, well, how can I do that? So you found obviously a way to do this, which I love, and I love that you're helping people. And it really seems, in talking with you, Billy, you've really created a way in your business to really consult with people to really add value for what is the need, what is it you're looking for. And I call the carbon capture or some of the stuff around energy, it really is the holy grail for a lot of people that are high earners. Because with real estate, you have the two buckets. You've got the investment kind of income bucket here. If you're investing in multifamily syndication, which is what we do a lot of, and other things, you can use the depreciation over here. But when it comes to ordinary income, that's totally separate. But when you have energy, you actually can take it over there. And so I think I mentioned I'm going to this conference on green energy. I think it's gonna be a lot of tree huggers, and I'm gonna hopefully get some hugs. But it's also learning about carbon sequestration and some of these other things that are actually new from the Inflation Reduction Act. They're kind of a part of that. But can you talk to us a little bit about obviously you have what you're doing, but what are some of the reasons why this exists? Is it just simply that there's so much political will around climate change and kind of that area, and what are maybe some other things people should be educated about in that space?
Yeah, so I think at the end of the day, it's about also being able to, well, number one, understand where someone needs help, and in this specific instance, it is where does the government need assistance, because they're not going to be able to do it as efficiently. And so if they're looking for assistance and they're providing incentives to help, and this specifically is in the production of additional energy, and being able to do that in a way which is greener and cleaner, then guess what? It also becomes that, listen, I'm helping Uncle Sam because Uncle Sam's not going to be efficient at this, so I was looking for help. And the fact that the matter is helping to produce more energy, which helps to make things not just move in terms of transport, but also in the production of goods and services, right? Because there's those two main, labor and energy, you need to produce things. And being a part of an investment team that is helping Uncle Sam to produce more energy, and doing that in a way which is, according to the IRS, we're following the IRS code and receiving the benefit and the incentives for that. It's really, when I look at it, and because I wasn't exposed to it before, and it's a lot of it has to do about exposure and education, and then from there, understanding, really getting my head around, okay, well, why exactly is this happening? And when you think, all right, well, we want to do energy production, and we're helping to do that, and we're receiving the benefit, and also taking the risk for doing that, right? Because one of the things I always like to say, Bronson, you don't get something for nothing, right? So you have to take certain types of risk to be able to receive certain types of rewards. And so that's the way that I look at it conceptually. And also one of the things that continue to attract me towards this space, and is also attracting other high earners. You mentioned it before. I just wanted to cite, there's this website called RepView. I don't know if you've seen or heard of it, but there's a lot of people in the IT space. And the company that I used to work for, like I go into RepView and I want to see like what are the top earners producing. Right. And when I went into the top earners, the company that I used to work for, in the high end, the top earners, not earners, averaged $1.2 million.
Wow.
Right.
Okay.
And so when I think about the example that you just talked about, right? Because I also work with investors that are in California. If that person, because it was a software company and there's a presence in California, that top earner that's earning $1.2 million, or earners, because this was the average.
Right.
If they're in California, that's a $600,000 tax bill on average, crazy. Right? Can you imagine if you could not just keep 100%, but even if you only kept 50% of that, like that's $300,000. How many different passive streams of income could you create, or other active streams of income, so that it actually helps you to buy your time to be able to get to the destination that you're looking for? So sometimes when we hear these examples, it helps us to understand, okay, well, it's actually, you're not trying to keep 100% of it. If you could, that would be great. But what if you could only keep 50% of it? Like that helps you to buy more time so that you can do the things that you want to do with the people that you really want to do it with. So.
Right. So, and you mentioned it too, it's all about, what kind of life do you want to live? What are your goals? And I'm going to come back to that a second, but there's a couple medical practitioners I know in California that just sold their practice for around $5 million, and they want to have a tax bill of $2 to $2.5 million. They found a way to basically get that tax bill to around $125,000. And how they did it is through the real estate professional designation, which is an IRS designation. I'm not a tax person or a CPA or anything to give any advice, but it's a way their spouses were real estate professionals, or they created that. And they found this thing called a conservation land trust or something, where you put in money in. It's a 4.5% multiple of what you put in is what you get your tax reduction. So you put 100K in, you get 450,000 in reduction. So they found a way to just bring it down to really, really low, which is amazing. But going back to kind of like what we're talking about just what kind of lifestyle do you want? What is it you want to do? To me, I realized I didn't want to like be owned by, I'd rather make less money and yet have the life I want. If I could just cover my expenses, that's kind of the rat race number. I could cover that number, then I could live the life I want. I could travel, a lot. I could spend time with my family. I could do all the things I want to do and create and do shows like this and create content, and I'll educate people. And it was awesome. So to me, like I'm working as harder than I was before, but I'm doing it with such passion. And I know you are as well too, which is great.
Yeah. I'd be interested also too, Bronson, that, because we've made this transition recently, and this is one of the things that happens to me, because I am just absolutely enthralled and passionate about being able to serve others through our business. And because there are things that we're still building, I feel like I could do this forever, right? And so there's all this thing where now I remember what the passion was about when I'm doing something. And so there's this also, I have to be very aware of, hey, listen, part of why I'm no longer in the corporate life is because I want to be able to spend more time, quality time, with my wife, with my kids, with, being able to fly back to the States. Like I just flew back to the States for 5 days because I wanted to see my dad, and I wanted to see my brother and my sister. And I found a flight that was great. And so I was able to do that because I had the freedom to do that. And I talked to my wife, and that was a great thing to be able to organize it amongst ourselves. But, and also having the appreciation, because not coming from money, I recognize what it's like to be able to have the freedom to say, you know what? It's not even about what bill I'm going to pay this month. It's not the bill that I'm going to pay next month. It's about how can I invest my time with my loved ones and do it, because I know that it's a finite asset, right? We can't be here forever. So how can I invest it for the amount of time that I'm here, be passionate, invest with the ones that I love? And it's one of those things that I really, really have to be aware of. And I'm just curious if that also happens to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's something that, I had a moment actually. I left, I think you and I both left our corporate jobs about a year ago, and it's the golden handcuffs, right? Is you're getting
Yeah.
paid too much to leave. Our families all thought we're crazy.
Yeah.
But, I was sitting right at the table where I'm sitting right now in my living room. And I had a moment, just this was a couple months after I left my job, and I remembered all the month end, quarter end sales. And what came out of my mouth was, thank God I'm not doing that job anymore. Nobody's calling me saying, hey, what's that? How's that sales looking at the end of the quarter? How's it? It's like, I just love that I don't have to do that anymore. And so I just had, there's so much passion. And I just think that there's a reason why 65% of people or more don't like their jobs.
Yeah.
And I just think, I realized for me, I didn't have to leave my job,
Hmm.
but I knew and really go after real estate and investing and helping
Yeah.
people. But I knew that when I be 70 or 80, I would have regretted. I would have
Yeah.
regretted not trying and going for it. And so that's, I think, really the thing is just really going after your dreams. But I kind of one more. I know we're kind of getting this
Yeah.
has gone very fast with the time, but
Yeah.
I wanted to just, we're going to kind of have how people can reach out to you. But let's
Yeah.
start with maybe something in your journey, Billy, because you've been doing this for a long time. You've seen a lot of different things. You've worked with a lot of investors. What's one thing that you wish you had known sooner, or maybe one piece of advice that you give to people that are like, I want to learn more about this. How do I learn more about just, what are some investments I can make in myself, I should say?
Yeah, so there's a couple things that I recognized. First of all, being a recovering perfectionist, I would say don't wait for every single stoplight to be green before you leave the house, because if that's what you're waiting for, everything to be perfect to start investing, it's probably best that you just do what you're doing now. And at the same time, you're going to continue to get the same results that you're getting now. You just have to be willing to deal with that. But the thing that I recognize, and I know you've heard this before, like because I came from a scarcity mindset, and not in a negative way, but because that's what I learned. Like I didn't have much, so everything I kept, I hoarded it. And that includes currency, right? Some people call it money. And I thought that that is what was giving me security. But it wasn't until I actually went from the theory that I was learning in the books to actually placing money, right, my own currency, into my very first deal, knowing that I had to take action on imperfect information. That's when things started to crystallize for me and go, oh, guess what? Guess where my attention went? My attention went to where I was placing my currency. And so, if anything, I would have placed more currency sooner, because that would have given me more of an opportunity to really learn by doing versus learn by reading. And it's those inputs that I got that were the things that actually allowed me to build the runway to freedom. So I would say make more bets sooner, bigger is what I would tell myself, because the things that I did in my corporate life were the things that allowed me to be in the top talent program, to, continue to travel. And at this point, it's been 86 countries and meet different people from different places. And it's just having the security in myself to say, hey, look, I'm going to place money. I could lose it. I'm going to make bigger stacks of money, because the bigger the stacks, the bigger the risk, but also the bigger the potential reward. And when you get educated and you surround yourself with the right people, you minimize and mitigate the possibility of you making a major mistake. So I know it's more than one thing. Sorry about that, but I'm kind of passionate. I love that question. That was an awesome question.
No, it's great. And I think there's a huge difference between theory, and we have a meetup in California. We do it once a month, and we've got about 40, 50 people show up, whatever. And for me, I used to go to these meetups for years. It was probably 6, 7 years I would go, and I never did anything. Or I had my one rental, but I just never did anything.
Right.
And we talk about this idea of, I'm at 80%, I'm not at 100% all in, but I'm kind of here. But when you actually start and you put money in a deal, whether it's 50 or 100K, it's like you're paying attention. Like for me, I'm paying attention. I'm watching that and I'm learning. There's so much learning that happens, and it's a different kind of learning. It's not a book learning. It's not a theory. It's like, this is boots on the ground. This is actually what's happening in this investment. And regardless, like I tell people, vet a few deals, vet a few operators, and then invest in something, because you're going to learn so much as you do that, that you're never going to get any other way, as you just actually going to be learning while you're doing it. But Billy, I just want to say, man, I just have really enjoyed this conversation. And I know a part of my ulterior motive, I'm coming to Barcelona, so we're going to get some coffee, we're going to hang out and talk. We're going to put our feet up on the chair and say, this is what we used to be salespeople. Now we're doing this. But man, I just love all the value you're bringing to the marketplace. I love the way that you have, created a life for yourself, for your family. It's very inspiring to me and to other people. And, for people, that all the education that you're doing, and really you're creating that those options for people that are trying to reduce ordinary income. You're creating options, in and out of real estate and other things to be able to do that. So I love that. I just want to, say I love all the content you're putting out. So how can people get in touch with you if they want to reach out?
Yeah, thank you, man. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and share a bit of my story with you, Bronson. And yeah, I will really, I welcome you with open arms here in Barcelona. And we'll have a coffee or two, which will be fantastic. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned earlier the Going Long podcast with Billy Keels. You can check me out there. Also, too, you mentioned for the person who's a accredited investor and you are looking to understand more about how you can not just create consistent returns, but also be able to keep more of your income to create the lifestyle that you really want. You can find out more at firstgencp.com/paylesstax. Once again, it's firstgencp.com/paylesstax. And just like you, Bronson, I love connecting with people on LinkedIn. The one thing I would ask is if you're going to if you're going to connect through LinkedIn, would love for you to have send a personalized invitation and just to let me know that you've already heard Bronson and I speaking here, and it just makes the conversation that much easier to continue. So thanks so much, Bronson. I appreciate the opportunity, man. It's just really been awesome. I cannot wait to see you here in Barcelona.
Awesome, man. Looking forward to it. Maybe you'll teach me some, we'll go salsa dancing, or we'll go have fun, or go get some wine, or it'll be great. So awesome, man. Thanks, Billy.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Mailbox Money Podcast. For more free resources, articles, and videos, go to bronsonequity.com. There you can download your copy of the special report, The Single Best Investment Strategy During and After a Pandemic. None of the information shared here is an offer to buy a specific investment, and this is for educational purposes only. Consult your financial, legal, and tax professionals and use your own common sense before making any investment decisions. Thanks for joining us, and be sure to tune in next time for more Mailbox Money.